Armed Citizen Podcast live. Brought to you by GunChannels.com, the best pro-gun and pro-Second Amendment community on the internet. Where we like to ask, what do the words armed citizen mean to you?
What is going on, my Go Squad? Welcome to the Armed Citizen Podcast live. This is episode 102. Sorry that I was not available last week. I had a long week at work, had some things come up at home, and life happens, as they say. But I'm glad to be back. I'm a little more refreshed. I think Clover talked to me yesterday, and I sounded like death probably. It was an interesting week, to say the least, but we're going to have a good time tonight. We're live, as always, on YouTube and simulcasting, as always, over on gunchannels.com. Once again, if you guys aren't already over at gunchannels.com, then please crawl out from under the rock in which you live and go check out the link that I just put in the chat. It is a great pro-gun, pro-second community started by G-Webs going on, man, was it 6 years ago? It's made for gun owners, by gun owners, to have conversations just like this. So it's pretty relevant tonight because we're going to have a discussion on what gun owners are and what the America seems to think that we are. And are the misconceptions, or are they true? Are we to blame for some of them? What can we do to really kind of help the image of what a gunner is? So we're going to talk about that. And if you're watching in replay or listening in podcast, welcome. We hope you enjoy the show. If you're new to the channel, new to the show, and you're here live, make sure you say hello over on the side chat, and we'd love to say hi to you on air. And if you have any questions, you can send them to live@ghosttactical.us, or you can send a text to 530-38-GHOST, 38-GHOST. So I'm not smart enough to figure out the numbers. I think it's 36 goes. It's 36 goes. So I think it's 364-4678. 530-364-4678, I believe. So check that out. Send us a text. Send us an email. If you have any questions, make sure you tag one of us in the side chat, and we'll make sure we run through it. So let's say hello to our illustrious panel out there, all the way from Kansas. We have the tactical chicken himself. What is going on, Gary?
Hey, not a whole lot. Thanks for the invite.
Glad to have you. And from Arizona, we have the Godfather himself. What's up, G?
Hey, I've been updating the Every Second Matters list of organizations over there.
Well, you've got Every Second Matters is up next week, so that'll be hopefully attended by everyone this weekend, and hopefully everyone does their part, whatever part it is. And it's all about making everybody aware about the Second Amendment. Some people open carry, some people will do Instagram posts, they'll do an open live chat, they'll do all sorts of different stuff out there. But go check out the organizations. G-Webs just put the link out there in the chat. Go check out the organizations on there. So it's pretty cool. And from Texas, the tactical virus, Leprechaun himself. What's up, Clove?
Hey, man. Good to see you back.
Yeah. You talked to me yesterday, and I was probably half asleep when we talked, I think.
You sounded horrible.
I bet I did. It was a long week at work and at home and all sorts of stuff. But, it is what it is. So I'm glad to have that week passed, and we're going to talk a little bit tonight, like I said, about how America perceives gun owners. And we have these, I don't know if they're misconceptions or not, because I guess it really can't be misconceptions if we continuously back up some of the notions that we are crazy people with firearms, and we're out there looking to start civil wars and overthrow the government. And we have people walking into Walmart are all kitted up with AR strapped to the chest. So maybe some of the misconceptions aren't misconceptions. Maybe we actually are what they think we are. But we're going to discuss something about that and what we go through in our daily lives to try to help combat that, and maybe what we can do out there as a whole to make everybody understand who we are, what we stand for, and all of that. So Everyone in this room, we're all good friends. We know each other. We've been around this thing for a little while. So I would assume we don't have to really worry about calling on people. I think we could have a civil conversation. And just so guys out there, just go ahead and we're going to throw out questions and all that, but don't feel like you have to wait for me to call on you. Let's go ahead and just have a good conversation. But I want to pose a question out there right now is in your local area, and I think a lot of us, at least in this panel right here, are probably living relatively, gun friendly areas or pro gun states that, you see someone walking around open carrying or whatever. People really don't think weird about that. But let's start with you guys and say, what are some of the misconceptions in your areas that people might think that gun owners are? And I'm going to start with Clover if you want to start with you and say, I know Texas is a pretty good pro gun state, but I'm sure there are people out there that still think that gun owners in general are one thing. Is there anything that you've heard people say to you about gun owners?
You're talking about the misconceptions or whatever that somebody on the fence or left of the issue would think.
Yeah,
right?
what they seem to think about gun owners in general without really knowing who we are.
Around here, it's really more. It's not even. It doesn't even get into the mentally unstable or overthrowing the government, really, or anything like that. I think for the most part, around here. Now you get into some of the bigger cities, maybe, but Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, things like that. Maybe a little bit different inside those cities, but as far as the vast majority of the state of Texas, and I think southern states in general, it's going to be that way. I don't know. It's more low intelligence, ignorance. That sort of thing, I guess. It's really looking at more of the, hunting aspect, taking care of the land and the family and almost a prepping style attitude about it, I guess, prepared for the apocalypse type thing. I think that is a big sentiment around here and when you're dealing in some of the southern states. I hate to use the term redneck, but I guess we can.
No, I say that all the time. I think a lot of people think that we're just the hillbilly rednecks that they see Dukes of Hazzard and maybe think we're all like Cooter or something. I don't know. I have no idea. But Anthony Thomas out there says assuming everyone is untrained, and there's a lot to be said about that. And there are a lot of people that are gun owners in this country that don't have any formal training, then that's okay. Yeah. We talk about training all the time, but just because you're untrained doesn't mean that you're not able to handle your firearm.
Here's the thing with that is, what do you say? What is your definition of train?
There you go.
Because if you're talking about formal course in most of your states, I mean, let's face it, the basics of a carry license or something like that training is a joke. It's more about understanding laws and regulations and what you can and can't do from that aspect. There's no firearms handling or anything like that really involved, so that really doesn't count. But if you're talking about training, simple safety briefings and things. I mean, do you know how to load it? Do you know where the safety is? Do you know how to rack the slide? Do you know basic sight alignment? Do you know all the little bitty things? There's not that much to it.
Right.
And so, you could be trained by a parent. You could be trained by an uncle. You could be trained by somebody at a range or in a league, or maybe your local gun shop, as far as, training.
Yeah.
So, I would agree that I think there's a kernel of truth to that too. I would agree that that's probably going on in some people's minds, and the kernel of truth is, if you're talking about formal training, oh good Lord, the vast majority of gun owners don't have that. But that doesn't mean that they're not trained in what they do.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're irresponsible gun owners.
I mean, I liken it to liken it to a situation that, being in IT and all of that, I would be on a service call and I'd be doing some work and they'd say, hey, can you come over here and look at this? We're having this problem. We're trying to figure out how to do this. And it's some software that I've never used before, right? Or I've used very little. And they're like, how do we do X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, I'll have to try to sit down and figure it out, And they're like, oh, you're the computer guru. We thought you knew. And I'm like, I know enough to do what I need to get done.
I know enough to be dangerous, right?
Right. Well, you don't want to use that in the firearm realm, obviously. But there's people that are that way. They have their guns for hunting or self-defense or whatever, the competition, whatever it is. And they're totally trained and competent and comfortable within that realm of what they're doing. And they may or may not care about things outside of that. So why would they go through the hassle of learning and training and understanding with things that they're never going to do with their firearm?
I want to bring Gary in real quick and say, Gary, being in Kansas, like I'm assuming Kansas, like Arkansas, it's a pretty gun-friendly state overall. But when you come across someone that that may didn't know that you were a firearm guy before or whatever, and they find out you are, what's their immediate reaction? Do they think that you're a certain way, or what do they think about you?
Well, usually the immediate reaction is really, or what are you scared of, or you're one of those people or something like that. And I think a lot of the perception is it maybe you've got a disregard for the law and stuff like that. And then when I talk to them and tell them about, how I've studied this and I've studied that, I've got a concealed carry permit and I know you can legally do this, you can't legally do this, and here's why. And as I go on, I can just see their eyes open up. It's like, this guy's not stupid. He's really logical. He's thought things out. He's under control and he knows what he's doing. So, but initially they think just the opposite. They can't understand because you got to get them there. But even where I work, it's probably about 40% of them in my office probably do carry, strangely enough. Probably more than that I don't even know about. But you've got the people who are on the other side. And if they ask me questions, I'll certainly talk with them and stuff like that. And
Yeah, and we're going to go to G real quick because, G's out there, and we're going to come back to Clover. Clover's got a we'll come right back to you here, Clover, in a second. We'll come to G real quick.
It's all good.
And G, you live in Arizona, and that is kind of widely respected as one of the top 2 or 3 most gun-friendly states in America. But obviously, not everyone is pro-gun or gun-friendly. What are some of the weird things that people who don't know anything about guns? What are some of the crazy things that you've heard from people that assume that you're a certain way?
I know what you're trying to ask, but I'm not a regular person. I spend all my time on the internet, and the people that I deal with in real life are gun people. So I don't have the standard sample set or whatever. Yeah. I also wouldn't focus on remember, retain, or seek out the extremes, especially against us, like, some weird gun person or whatever, unless it came across my path. I don't look for that kind of stuff. So, and I don't try to remember any of that kind of stuff. Even frequency, honestly, like, it doesn't happen enough that I would have to really seriously think about it. And then it would probably just be something like, as often as I see somebody carrying like a giant broadsword. I mean, I've seen people carrying big, like, Conan swords before. I don't know if they were going to a play or if they were doing something weird, but you know what I mean? Like, just, I've seen people with ninja swords, just public before. It's just, you see things occasionally. So that's about as occasionally as I've ever heard of a gun thing. But it's probably a little bit of the media and how much they're going to focus on it. Because I'm sure it happens all the time in a country of 360 million people. It probably happens like 10 times a day. Something weird with a gun happens everywhere. It's just that when it happens in a crowd where nobody cares and nobody's got some like incentive to focus on it for any reason, it just happens and life goes on. But that's what I was going to really try to answer. So I don't really think I haven't answered your question, but I was going to say,
no, it's all right.
The when you brought it up, And because also I know Clover is chomping at the bit to say something, the longer I talk, he's got to just sit there not saying anything. So,
Hey, G, take your time. Speak as long as
you learn patience is nothing else at the end of the rainbow. It's all good.
That's right.
so I just got done binge watching um, Antonia and Nina's podcast called Triggered 2A. What's it called? Trigger Warning 2A, I think. So anyway, they just brought up some interesting stuff. They're girls and they're young. I'm guessing millennial / whatever the next generation is. And they're girls. So they're coming at it from a different thing. And I'm sure it's been said before, but for whatever reason, it didn't resonate or sink in or nothing. But people come into guns for different reasons. And I've been paying a lot of attention to generations lately. And we acknowledge that video games bring people into the firearms realm, but we're losing the traditional stuff. I don't, you guys every once in a while say, what's the first time you shot a gun? I don't have any recollection of the first time I shot a gun. There's just always been guns around. It's like when the first time you pick up a shovel. I don't know. Some point in my life, I probably did for the first time. I don't even know if it was a big deal. Like it was, it was probably, I have no idea. So, people have different experiences and stuff. Well, we know the gamers are coming in. We know that we're not getting as many hunters potentially. We don't know what's going on, but I follow quite a few of the competition or whatever kids, the younger kids. There's some really neat role models. I mean, Clover's had them on his show before, but I just think as far as what they put out on Instagram, they're putting out some decent stuff. Like they're young. They're not into all the weirdness or whatever, and they're not like snarky yet. So their content is just interesting gun stuff, and it's neat to see people explore and to see how they're interested in it. So I guess their parents are influential, at least receptive, if not helping steer them right. So that's a whole aspect of getting new people into guns. But the girls on this podcast, it was one of their recent ones. It wasn't yesterday's, I don't think. We're talking about, maybe it was yesterday's. We're talking about females coming in. They're coming in from the self-defense realm. And I almost never look at the self-defense realm. Even though I've been around guns forever, I didn't start carrying until, 9 years ago or something, which I'm old, so that's not very long for me. But I didn't even think about it until it was an easy thing to do here in Arizona. If we went hunting, I had a gun. But it's not like I wore a gun every day because it just wasn't a thing until it became like aware of it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. I'm going to exercise that right. But there's people that come into firearms not because they're interested in competition or collecting or investing or all the other interesting things that you might be interested in guns about. Certainly not into reloading or hunting or anything like that. But I guess that's where I'm getting at is we can focus on why people might think we're weird, but I'd rather spend time on figuring out all the different ways people are coming into it for the valid reasons, focus on that. And I think the real reason we're talking about this is because something bad happened. The media, who has a dwindling grasp on people's attention, knows that they need to focus on this stuff to plead with emotions or to screw with people, to exploit the tragedies timely. So that's why we react to it. How do we defend against that? 364 other days of the year, we're doing stuff that's showing what a real valid gun owner does and whatever else they do. Everything that we do on gun channels, on Gun Streamer, on GunTube, on the other platforms that host videos that don't really care who you are, and then all the other social platforms and stuff, not to mention all the other boots on the ground efforts that people are doing. So that kind of stuff is changing and reaching more people than whatever we can do in the ambush time, like right now, when they expect us to have these conversations and they're either shadow banning us or they're just using this to sell whatever the ad came up before this video.
There you go. Before Clover just absolutely burst at the seams, he wanted to bring up something on the fear.
I'd also like to read the Declaration.
Keep going. Yeah, we're going to filibuster here live on the internet.
Go with the Magna Carta. I mean, why something as short as the Declaration?
Yeah, we're going to have a filibuster. We're going to exercise a filibuster right here to educate people. Make sure Clover doesn't get the floor. Go ahead, Clover.
It's all good. Now, Gizzard hit on something earlier that, and that's what's great about having a panel and having the conversation is, one person talks, especially when you go first like I did. and then somebody else says something, and you're like, and then they don't follow up, and shame on you because you didn't follow up with it. But talking about the getting the question of what are you scared of, what are you afraid of, or what do you fear? And there's a couple of points I think to make with that. First of all, is that it's a situation where it's filled with hypocrisy, because they'll ask a question like that. Well, what are you so scared of that you got to carry a gun every day? What do you fear that you have to, you're so into firearms and all this stuff? And then in the same breath, in the same conversation, they're talking about all these regulations because of all of this bad gun violence and everything else. So it's really hypocritical, and a lot of times they don't see that. I do agree we live in a rather safe society, and there's not really anything to fear. But that builds onto my second point, that everybody here probably has a fire extinguisher at their disposal. But do you fear your house burning down every second of every day? Well, of course you don't. You've got it there just in case. And so, in a self-defense mindset, I mean, that's where it lies. It has nothing to do with fear.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to go with that. And like you said, everyone's got a fire extinguisher. There are ways that we can, maybe when we're talking to someone that might have these weird misconceptions on how to relate to their own personal lives, make them understand who we are, what we are. But I want to go back to what G was talking about with video games. And I think that he hit something right there. And it's not just bringing in this younger millennial generation. A lot of them are brought into guns because of video games. And that is very, very true. Unfortunately, a lot of their parents see these violent video games and all of that, and they assume that all gun people just want to do that, but in real life. And whether they think that we're a militia trying to overthrow the government or whatever, wanting to play war games, they go see Red Dawn. They just assume all this stuff. But I think that there is a side of the video game that is bringing more people into it. But it's also could be one of those where parents are watching their kids play these violent video games and think, well, all these gun people are just nuts. They should have kind of weapons out in real life. They don't realize there's an NFA,
I think you stumbled across something there. If you're a good parent and you let your kid watch the real Red Dawn, you're going to grow up and be a patriotic, real American who's proud of the Second Amendment. Yeah. And if you're a bad parent and you let your kid inadvertently watch that other garbage that they called the same name, then you grow up anti-gun and you're a jerk.
Well, the problem is a lot of the parents that are these teenagers' age, they don't even really probably realize there was a Red Dawn back in the 80s. They must think that, was it Chris Hemsworth or whichever Hemsworth it is the real one, Lunatic out there says he has a tough time conversations with skeet shooters. They seem really anti-AR, and this is something that's interesting too, because the reason why I brought that up is there are people within our own community that think that a certain other section of the community is weird. Was it the shotgun guys think that the AR and the handgun guys are weird, and this, that, and the other. And I think that's very true. I think that goes on. I see it at my range.
It can go more than just not being a fan of this stuff. I mean, there's definitely animosity when somebody doesn't respect your right to own property, yet they're standing right next to, they own the grandfathers of your property. That can be more than just like, oh, I don't like your stuff. You know what I mean? Like, sure. If somebody's willing to sell you out, like, oh, I don't need those black guns, get rid of them. And then, you know what I mean? Like, you got very little reason to go hang out with that guy who's holding onto his wooden whatever it is. Well, and I'm thinking more like CNR. I'm not thinking anything more than like people that are maybe collecting or that, have some delusion of like, I can keep historic things, but modern stuff is too dangerous. That sure. Kind of animosity.
Well, speaking directly with when you're talking about shotgunners, one thing that you got to be careful about, and that's what bothers me, and that's part of with the whole. And I love it when G comments on the FUD Life stuff and things like that, because it does help move the conversation forward. But people don't understand what they don't understand. And so, like that comment, well, the shotgunners, they just don't like ARs. Well, first of all, do you understand the history of shotgunning? Because shotgunning is a snooty faluti. That's kind of where it all started. It was kings and queens and upper echelon. That's why you see $25,000-$30,000 over under shotguns and everything else. So to pin that down like it's a recent thing that all of a sudden they're against ARs, or that it even really has to do, the root problem of that has anything to do with an AR, is very short-sighted, because you're not looking at the overall community or niche or concept or whatever. And so that's where I say that when we're dealing with the different sects, SECTS, always like to spell that out,
Yes.
within the community. Don't want to be don't want to be talking girl versus boy here for sure. When we're dealing with those, it's important to understand each one. And so that's where everybody has their thing and everybody has their strong suit. Very few of us are into just one thing. Okay, we may have our main thing. Our main thing may be competition. Our main thing may be self-defense. It may be, as G. West pointed out, it may be collectible, maybe MilSerp CNR stuff. But we've got little tastes, right, in other areas and other genres and other pockets. So it's important to utilize that common ground that you have, that little bit of common ground you have, to then be able to talk about the things that you know about. And a lot of times that's all it is. And I think that people speak off the cuff a lot. I think you get a lot of people that they may joke about it, whether, it's a shotgunner talking about, let's say an AR or something like that, or you're talking about a competition person that's maybe dogging on hunting or something like that a little bit. And, for the most part, that's just, again, that's not their thing. And it's just, they don't really care about that. So, it's time to educate those people about the things. Like I said, they don't know what they don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. So let's fill in those gaps.
Well, that's a great transition, though, to bring up to you guys and ask some questions to everybody out there. Is I was going to start this out by saying that most of the people, whether they're anti-gun or just gun illiterate, most of the people that think that gun owners are this certain wild, wild west cowboy or this wannabe G.I. Joe or whatever they think about us, it just means that they're probably uneducated. And you brought the education side of things. And to throw into that, let's talk about people within our own community and our own ranks are uneducated on maybe different areas of the gun community. So my question to you guys, and let's just not worry about going through them, let's just jump out there with your free ideas. Let's have a conversation is how do you educate someone that seemingly shows zero interest in learning?
You don't.
Yeah, who are we talking
You
about?
have to create the interest first, and that's my take on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the best luck is to offer awareness, offer like here's insight, and then put it out. There's little way to force anybody. Is like, it's inversely proportional. You can't force anybody, but by putting it there, you've got all the potential in the world for somebody to find it. And if it's valid and useful, it's going to get shared and used, right? It's going to be useful. So that's my suggestion, is just to contribute and share. And everyone's voice is a little different. So that means everybody's take on it's going to be a little different. I was going to throw out there, as far as the community working together and having different aspects of the community, that's what makes us stronger. Having a bunch of blocks, having a bunch of different stones or a bunch of boulders. You don't need to shape a boulder. It's nice when you can shape a boulder to conform with the shape of another boulder or whatever. I mean, that could be strong, but I don't think it's necessary. You don't have to build a wall by shaping each brick to fit the bricks around it. You can have mortar. You can have stuff that fills the gaps and keeps it strong, and you still got a strong wall based on the accumulation of various pieces or whatever, and that's where again, value your voice as an individual, and with flavor you're going to gravitate to X and Y and Z, and somebody else is going to gravitate to A, B, and C, and somebody else is going to be some other mix, and then together we create like a strong web or a strong interconnectivity. We make sure information gets out there, not because we have an established pattern that everyone has to agree with, which is never going to happen. That's fantasy land, to have everybody conform to some distribution pattern or something. But if everybody realizes that we all are part of the board collective, that we all are, a part of and help facilitate the distribution of info and direction, then that's where we're stronger. And then you don't expect bricks to merge and become concrete. Smashing them all up and making them all into concrete, that's good, I guess, for certain aspects, but it doesn't necessarily it's not perfect. It's not stronger than bricks or stronger than rock. So I think having individuals that don't get along is fine. And I think they're stronger when we got people looking in different directions. You don't breach a house or whatever with everybody looking straight forward like a football team.
Typically.
When you're talking about reaching out, I mean, a few things come to mind for me. The big one, I talk about this all the time, and I just got finished with it, is relevancy. You can create interest simply by relevancy. And I liken it to maybe, I remember a conversation we had and spent hours on the internet looking at revolvers one time.
Yeah.
You and I. Sure. And prior to that, you were talking about a Smith & Wesson Model 10 you had, which is one of the greatest to me models of all time, on a revolver, and you hated it.
Got rid of it. I hated it. Yep,
you were like, I hated it. And we got to talking, and I think I kind of changed your mind that you would probably, if you found a good deal on one, you'd probably buy one now.
Probably would, yeah.
And so how did we do that? We did that with relevancy. I enjoyed revolvers. You didn't like them, but I know that you like the machine and the mechanical aspect. I know you like the aesthetics and the beauty, just the art in them and stuff like that. So what did we do? We got online and we started looking at pretty revolvers, basically, right? So right. And that you're already in the fold and everything else. So I'm not using that as a definitive example of relevancy, but that's sort of how it works. And then also a component when you're approaching somebody like that and you're talking with somebody is, and this is where we get, it's okay. Us four here, we could rip into each other in the next 5 minutes and we could tear each other apart and laugh and chuckle and enjoy doing it and have fun and know that that's exactly what we're doing. And there's a lot of that goes on in the gun community, in the firearm culture, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of that goes on because, we really know each other. We know all the little eccentricities or whatever of each other. And so we can do that. And we got to be really careful when we're dealing with not just somebody on the fence or left on the issue of firearms, but of 2A in general, but also those that are maybe outside of our niche. It's something that we don't understand. And what we've got to do is we've really got to be careful. And I hate to use the term safe space because it's been it's been something that's been derogatory to beat the left side of the entire political spectrum over the head with. But you do. I mean, that's one of the first things when we talk about these clubs and organizations and things when we're dealing with youth. That's the number one key you start out with when you are having your first of the year meeting or your member drive pitch or whatever, is that, hey, this is a safe and controlled environment. Well, why is that? That's because you're dealing with an object that can be detrimental to your health in one way or another, and not even on the way down the spectrum on the side of a fatality, but just handling ammunition that's a lot of 22 is uncoated lead nose, and just handling that and then not washing your hands properly. And I mean, you could get sick, and there's all kinds of things that can go into that. So it's the same way. I think we need to make the same approach. I guess what I'm saying, if you had somebody kind of new or outside the fold of your niche or community that was on the range, and you were dealing with them on the range and trying to educate them in a physical sense, right? The first thing is to make it safe and make them comfortable. And I think that needs to be applied in a conversational aspect as well.
Yeah, G Clover. I mean, G or Gary. You have anything you want to add on that one, real quick?
Well, I think when you're talking to people, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to have as much knowledge as possible, obviously, and you need to speak logically and clearly, and not necessarily be argumentative, but be able to make your point and act like you know what you're talking about because you do. Uh, but you also, I think, you have to stress some of the positive aspects of what we do. I mean, we obviously are trying to hone a skill. You know, you go practice with your guns and stuff like that because it's a sport. You try to be as good as you can with it. You try to learn how to be safe. You maintain your stuff. You do all kinds of stuff. You learn about laws and stuff like that, and a gun owner probably knows more about his craft than a lot of people driving cars know about the laws and stuff like that. I mean, people. People don't get in a car and just give the kid their keys and they haven't had any classes or anything here. Go learn how to drive a car. No, you send them to a class, and stuff like that. And I think responsible gun owners learn everything there is to know about their guns. They practice with them, know how they're going to react. You study them and stuff like that. And when they find out how much research you put into it, how much practice you put into it, and the safe way that you do things, that you're not just some maverick sticking a gun in your pocket and walking down the street like it's a Dodge City or something like that. It's nothing like that at all. And you've got to make that clear that you're just a normal person who enjoys guns. A gun owner is anybody. Anybody could be a gun owner. God, if I can, anybody can.
That's right. Now you bring up a good point about trying to educate people, and I think that there's a lot of us that will sit there that spend a lot of time, like you said, worrying about laws, going and looking, researching bills, more 2A stuff than just being a gun owner. And I think that there is a distinct difference between being a gun owner and being a 2A advocate or activist. I think gun owners are gun owners, and a lot of the people that we consider friends of the community really don't care about the laws. They don't care about anything except for they've got their gun for self-defense or whatever they've got it for. And when asked upon if that person is asked by a non-gun person, why do you have a gun, or blah blah blah, and I've seen it happen. There's a tendency there's people saying, well, I don't care about guns except for I've got one just in case someone breaks in the house. And so even from someone who we would consider an ally is giving an opinion that people will take as, well, maybe everyone feels that way. So if no one really cares, then why is a second, there's a lot of different things that people speak for other people indirectly that I think really hurts. One of the things that gets me, and you hear all this about, is violent TV shows and violent movies. So I want to ask you guys the next one. The average person watching, let's say, John Wick, and they're watching it for an entertainment value, and they love it. They like to have the action movies. And then they sit there and say, well, that's a great movie, but man, what would happen if something like that really happened in real life? And they don't ever understand that if anything ever came close to that, I watch what's it called? London is Falling, or the White House Fallen or Down, or whatever it's called. And it's funny to me because they'll sit there and say, what if that really happens? What if that really happens? It could really happen. What if Red Dawn really happens? Well, first of all, it's not going to happen. Something like that is not going to happen. You're not going to have this mercenary assassin rolling around New York City on a horse or whatever, shooting up museums with another assassin. It's just not going to happen. But I think they see these movies, they see these TV shows, and say, well, if you have training or if you know how to use a handgun, then that could happen. That could happen where you're going to walk down, someone's going to piss you off, and you're just going to start pulling your gun, and you're going to go ape shit on somebody and just start shooting up a place. And it's hard because once they've kind of made their mind up on gun owners are these crazy people just looking for a reason to shoot their gun, I don't know if there's a way to bring them back. You know, you can try to relate to them. You can try to understand that I carry because I'm here to protect not just myself, but my family, anyone else that can't protect themselves. But if they come back and say, well, you're just looking to shoot your gun, or, you know, you're anticipating to shoot your gun. What do they say about the guy in El Paso? He went in there looking to shoot his gun. And that's what gun owners are thinking, are being thought of, is we're just out there trying to cause havoc. And that's the thing that really pisses me off. And I think G out there is going nuts trying to say something here.
First off, yeah, I got blown off from the last one. I got gizzarded right in front of Gizzard. That's disrespectful.
Oh, I gizzard you? I'm bad.
Yeah. So I don't agree with those guys. I think that, I mean, I don't disagree, but I don't agree. I don't want to say the same thing as them, because I've been doing this for a while now. And you mentioned earlier in the show that Gun Channels itself is 6 years old. I've been in these conversations like this. Gun Channels is a result of the excellent conversations that happened between 10 and 13. And, you know, there was all kinds of stuff happening or whatever. But anyway, well, the one thing that's in common over all of those years is I don't know what y'all call yourselves, but again, I've been really generation focused lately. So the one thing that we've got in common is a whole bunch of Generation X people who there's a whole thing about Generation X. Like, we're not boomers, but we're basically boomers, right? Like, we come
from Generation X. Yeah, we're all about the same age in here, except for Gary. He's old as hell.
But what I'm getting at, though, is that there's a perspective of this generation that's in common, and what we aren't taking into effect and what we're not listening to and what we're not seeking out is the actual generation we're talking about. Even when you said it earlier, you said millennial, because think about it, millennials are 35 years old. They're having children that are babies. Our children, our generation's children, are the generation that's voting this time. They are a third of the people voting. Our parents are a third of the people voting. We're insignificant. The millennials are a third, and the new generation, our children, are a third. So the next election, like this election, will be a fight between them three. They will fight for control, and who knows how many of the old people are actually going to show up. Maybe they'll show up in droves because they know it's their last effort. Maybe they'll just say, fuck it, we're done. Oh, sorry, screw it, we're done. But who knows if the kids, I don't think the young kids, I don't want to give them, I don't have any lack of respect for these young kids. They're our kids, literally. They're the kids. I know these kids that are voting for the first time. They are interested. They understand what their responsibility is to the country and whatnot. And I think that I'm looking forward to what they do. I don't think they're brainwashed. I think there are a bunch of people that are brainwashed, and the media certainly has reason to only focus on those people and to try to manipulate society as much as possible by focus on what they want to or whatever. But I was going to disagree with these guys by saying we haven't listened to what the generation, our kids, want. And maybe what they want is something different than what we appreciated. We end up, I believe, doing some version of what happened to us, right? Like, we either got sat down or through osmosis, or we went to a class, but some form of formal education happened to all of us. That's not happening. Like, these kids don't seek that out. Nobody's sitting these kids down and doing anything formally. Nobody's expecting them to sit down and not chew gum and pay attention. So if we expect them to do that when they're at the range, one, they're going to not like it, and two, that's not how they learn. From what I'm told is you tell them, here's the result, and they figure it out. Like, you tell them what the goal is and they just figure it out. They ask questions when necessary. They're not all crazy where they think they know everything. They're just, for like every kid does, but you know what I mean? Like, they're able to do stuff that we don't give them credit for, I think. anyway, so that was my thing. I don't disagree, but I don't agree with anybody, because I think if we really want to answer that question, we need to have youngins in here, and not youngins like Clover interviews who've been around guns or fluent in gun lingo, right? Who are gun people already, but youngins, I don't know, somebody's kids maybe. I don't know how to even do something like that. I wouldn't want to do it. You guys can do it, your parents. But bringing people in that are somehow kids that are friends of somebody who doesn't know about guns or something, and then talk to them. How would you want to go to the range? I mean, I can't believe this. There's a generation now of kids that know what summer camp is. They don't go to summer camp. They don't know what it's like to do stuff like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I used to love summer camp, and we used to go down to Clover Plies. We went down to Sky Ranch all the time, and that's where we spent a week or two every summer. And it was that was like the best part of the summer camp. To bring up a point that you were talking about, Chi, is you were absolutely correct, because one of my daughter's ex-boyfriends had never, he played video games a lot, and he was always looking at, he played Call of Duty and Rainbow Six and all of that stuff. And he would come to visit, and the first time he came to visit, he had never shot a gun before. He wasn't anti-gun. He wasn't saying, "Oh, I'm never going to shoot." He was just, he had never been around anyone in Texas, in San Antonio area. He had never been around anyone that was kind of went out and shot. So it wasn't like he was anti, but he never shot anyone, shot any guns.
I hope
shot any guns. And it was interesting, because when he came the first time, I asked us, he made sure that he said, "Hey, do you think your dad would take me to the range?" But my daughter was like, "Hell yeah, I'll take you to the range," And so when he got here, we're having dinner, and I said, "So when do you want to go to the range?" He said, "Oh, just whenever you want to go." And I said, "Well, what do you want to shoot?" And he says, "Well, what do you have?" So I took him downstairs and opened up a couple of safes, and he was like, "Well, do you have this gun?" And it was like the 92 or something. He's like, and he started naming off these different guns, and I realized, I think he wanted to shoot like the 92. He wanted to shoot an AK, an AR, and like the Scorpion. At that time, I had a CZ Scorpion. And I realized that all of those guns were very prevalent on Call of Duty and or Rainbow Six. And for him, it wasn't necessarily that he wanted to learn how to shoot guns. I think he wanted the experience of shooting the real thing, so that when he's playing his video games, he kind of knows what that was. And for me, I didn't question, I didn't argue, I didn't sit there and try to make him into a gun person. If video games was his entrance into firearms, then I made sure he had a safe, fun experience. And I think he had a blast. And the next couple of times he came, he made sure that he wanted to shoot something different and all that. Now, I don't think he went home and was trying to try to buy a gun by any means. He hadn't gotten to that point. And that's part of what I'm trying to get at is, let's relate to however we need to relate to these people to get them to the range or to get them to understand firearms. But then at the same time, don't force it down their throat. Let's not try to sit there and take them from a non-gun person to concealed carry, going to my next gun rally tomorrow. Let's understand that it's going to take time. And I think Clover said it the last couple of years a lot. We're not here to change their minds. We're here to plant that seed, and hopefully they go do their own research and come up with the solution, the answers themselves. But I think where a lot of people get the problem is they try to convince everyone that we're right. And that necessarily isn't always the case. We need to relate to them, let them experience it, and then let them take that experience home and let them decide for themselves whether they become a gun person. Whether or not they become a gun person or not is irrelevant. At least they've had a quote-unquote positive experience, to where maybe the next person they hear, they'll be able to sit there and say, I don't own guns, but I've shot guns, and I know some gun people, and they're not really that crazy. They seriously care about safety. They care about freedom, and they made it a really cool experience for me. I chose not to go buy a gun, but that helps also. Just because they're not a gun person doesn't mean that they can't help us in that journey. G, you wanted to bring up something?
Can you screen share me there?
Oh, yeah, let me add this to the...
I was just going to also say, there's, as you were saying that, I don't think anyone's ever mentioned this before, but like for my parents, know what a video game is. Probably they think it's like Pac-Man or something like me, right? So they're not into video games. But with the novels and stuff like Tom Clancy or whatever that guy's name is, there might be ways to bring people in from other media because guns are prevalent. Movies, obviously, we don't really talk about movies, but people come into it from that. Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to take a second here to plug. Gunstreamer's got a thing going. You can check out Contributus and then have a chance to win some cool stuff, right? 2A4E is doing a thing this month with Yankee, the month of August. Get in on that at the $20 level over on Patreon. A lot of people are erroneously saying Patreon has issues when more than likely people don't know how to use Patreon efficiently and are finding consequences and then going off the handle and getting butt hurt. So there's lots of good use for Patreon. A heck of a lot of people use it to the tune of over $1 million a month. Gets distributed through Patreon. And one of the ways to get people on the radar is to contribute and to help an organization like 2A4E. Tony's been on Ghost Show before, but if people don't know, Tony Simon is boots on the ground, bringing people in New Jersey, which is just getting wailed on constantly. Yeah. Bringing people from all walks of life to the gun shop in New Jersey or a shooting range in New Jersey, does gun orientation and familiarization, and then some range time so that people have a chance to do just the kind of stuff we're talking about, except he's been doing that every other month for years now. Real boots on the ground stuff. And he's doing this on, what do you call, like shoestrings, on a real small budget. He's trying to just do it himself. He's new to the whole idea, the concept of crowdfunding or community funding a project like this. And the more we can give him as far as resources, obviously the more time he can spend on it to develop it or whatever. So this month he's working with Yankee, all kinds of cool giveaways and stuff. If you're at the $20 level on his Patreon, I'll drop links here in a second. And then lastly, GunTube. Mike is over there trying to do stuff with that to compete with the Duck over here. And he's got 4 days left on his extended project there. And again, if you're not able to financially support any or all of these, consider sharing the projects. They're all in their last days. These are all August campaigns, and they're all have value to the community, to us individually, but to the, like Night Strike says, archiving the Second Amendment. At a flip of a switch, an online platform, you don't have to screen share. Thanks. Thanks for the time to be able to plug them. But at a flip of a switch, YouTube can turn off all of the content at once, and it could just never show up on the internet again. GunTube's GunStreamer are preventing stuff like that. Tony, of course, is doing the kind of stuff we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, and Tony's doing a great job. Obviously, Ashley and Austin and Paul over at GunStreamer are friends of ours, and they do a great job over there growing a platform. About a year and a half. They're about a year and a half into this thing, and it's really awesome to see someone having the success that GunStreamer's having. Obviously, GunTube with Night Strike, trying to help him out, trying to get him to where he's able to take that next step to the next level of video streaming and hosting and all of that for the gun community. And obviously, Tony does a great job, not only as a trainer, but he does a couple different podcasts. And yeah, if there's any other projects out there you guys want to talk about, go ahead and put them the links on the side, and I'll make sure I put all these links into the description down below after this is over to get a quick link over there. But yeah, it's really cool. We're talking about growing the exposure of these different projects that are going on, and this all comes down to is good people trying to bring light to the rest of America of who we are. And I think that we all have our own reasons why we do this, whether it's for fun or a hobby, or we end up being it. You start out as maybe turn the camera on for fun, and then it turns into this thing, and we're all in it now. And there are people that just continue to have fun and be an entertainer. Fantastic. There are people that kind of take the road to being more two-way savvy, at least more two-way aware, and they use the different avenues, whether it's podcasts or videos or live streams or whatever they have at their disposal that they can use to get our message out. And I think that the problem that we have sometimes is within our own ranks, there are people within our own quote unquote new media that don't help our cause. And I wish that, all of the channels that are out there that are the tannerite exploding and shooting pumpkins and all of that, and that's all great for entertainment. And I just wish that sometimes I'll watch a video and they're just not safe with their firearms. And that's what gets me, because there could be someone that could be watching that video that sit there and says, man, these, what do they call them? The firearm mishaps or whatever they call. And these people make these long videos that talk about, I don't know what they call them, but they're accidents with firearms. And people think they're funny, and to a certain extent they are. And there's some of these that are very funny, but those are putting out a message to the rest of America that we are not responsible. We're not safe. And these few people out there are what get millions and millions of views. So they think that, once again, we're the whole redneck, hillbillies that they're going to shoot our, I shot myself in the leg, that guy and all that. So it's interesting how it goes. Fails. That's what Midnight Rains, the gun fails. That's what it is. Thank you. Like I said, I'm not a very smart guy. So, anyways, let's kind of talk real quick before we start heading out. I got one more topic to bring up. And this is kind of how we resolve this is, what are some of the steps that we can do if we are to blame for some of the misconceptions? We talked about proper ways of educating and all of that, but let's kind of start talking about some specifics. I want to start with Clover and say, for someone out there that has never really approached an anti-gunner or someone that gets nervous when they get asked the questions, hey, why you carry a gun and all that, to help people out there, what are some of the things that you have said or you have done specifically that might help someone have that conversation? I ask the tough questions around here.
Yeah, you okay. Give me all of that one more time, because that was.
Yeah, I know. I have a way of with
like a typical ghost question. Yeah,
it was. Yeah. Okay, so for someone out there that is a gun person, but they've never been approached, they've never had the question asked, why do you have to have an AR? Why do you feel like you have to carry every day? If they have that question asked, what are some of the answers or conversations that you've personally used that might help them have that conversation more effectively?
Again, I go back to relevancy and relating it. I mean, the fire extinguisher thing, comes to play and all of that. I think it's important. I think it's important when that question's asked. I think it's the first thing I would say, and this goes back into what I was saying earlier about the whole being safe and being comfortable, is take a breath and don't get defensive, because that can be a gotcha question. G-Webs likes to talk about the ambushes all the time, and it could be, but it could also be legitimate. So take a breath and, first of all, approach it as if it is a legitimate question. You're going to find out real quick whether it's a gotcha or whether it's
fake or is it legitimate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and everybody's answer to that is going to be different, and so that's really a hard one to say, to recommend and say, you need to say X, Y, and Z, because the way you answer that is going to be different. I mean, ultimately for me, when it says, somebody wants or somebody needs, or, why do you need or why do you want, it comes down to anything else. Why do you need the, high dollar Cadillac to drive around? Why do you need the $60,000, $75,000 Dodge pickup to drive around? I mean, the $20,000 one would do the same exact thing. Why do you do that? I mean, that doesn't seem fiscally responsible. I mean, there's, you turn that around to things that's going to be kind of relatable for them. And then just you kind of take the conversation from there. So, like I said, you're gonna find out if it's going to be if they're genuinely asking or if they're being confrontational. If they're being confrontational, then you kind of need to be courteous, be nice. Don't give them any reason to hate you personally. Um, Say your piece, make your point, plant that seed, and then walk away. There's no sense in prolonging a confrontation that's going to go nowhere. But if you start getting movement, and they truly are asking, and there's nothing wrong with ignorance. So a lot of times we say, "Oh, this person's stupid," or we use a lot of different terminology, and ignorance is or being ignorant has taken on a bad connotation, and it's really not. We're all ignorant about a lot of different things. So that's we gotta not be afraid to use that and apply that even to ourselves and say, hey, well, I'm ignorant on this. Can you educate me, please? At least a little bit. Give me the Cliff Notes version. Um, and so you're going to be able to see if that person is truly ignorant of whatever's going on and being genuine. I think you're going to be able to tell that pretty quickly, and just walk them through it at their own pace and their own leisure. You know what I'm saying? I mean, answer it as directly and as simple as possible according to whatever your reasoning for that is. And then, put the question back on them. Is there anything I need to explain with that or elaborate on? Is there, can I ask if you've got another question? You got a follow up or anything else? Follow up question? Is there something else I can, you know, potentially add to this to better help you understand and make it a situation to where that person knows that you're trying to that you're invested in the conversation and you're truly trying to help them understand. You're not trying to be confrontational. You're not trying to argue, and you're not trying to win at talking, right? It's
Right.
you're just trying to move it forward and help them to better understand. And I think that if you've got a person out there, like I said, that's not got an ulterior motive and trying to pin you down with a gotcha or something like that. I think that adds to the whole being safe, being comfortable, and you're going to have a much better conversation, I believe.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Gary, what about you? Is there anything that you have done that has seemingly worked in the past to help have these conversations go smoother?
I think you got to bring in the human side of it. When they say, well, I saw this guy on the news, he's this and that, all these gun owners are this and that. And I said, no, it's not true at all. I said, gun owners are just regular people like you and me. I said, they love their families, they love their country, they love their freedom. Uh, they, by and large, will put the gun in their pocket or in their, inside their holster or whatever and go about their day and forget about it. It's not like you're going out there trying to be a gun person. You just want to live your life and you just happen to have a gun. And that's the way it really is. You're just a normal person, just like they are, and try to make them see it that way.
Yeah, that's something that I try to preach all the time is, having them understand that we're just normal everyday people. That, for the most of the time, if you don't know me really well, you see me out in Walmart and all that. We go to church, our kids play sports together, we go to games together. Chances are you probably don't even know that I'm carrying. And so if you find out that I carry a gun every day and you start to change your mind about me, why is that? Why am I all of a sudden this evil monster when for the last 10 years of our lives of hanging out and all that, I've just been another person. So maybe that's on me. Maybe I haven't done my job. And this is an example, but maybe I haven't done my job in this example of letting everybody know that I'm a gun owner or I carry, but that's really not what it's about for me. It's not necessarily that I want to be out there telling everyone wearing a sign like a scarlet letter of I'm a gun owner, I'm carrying, that kind of goes against the point. But I think that if the conversation comes up, then that's when we have to do it. I think that's why sometimes we get beat down is I think some people are actively looking to push this conversation on someone that may not be ready or willing to have that conversation. And let's be honest, there is a time when someone's ready to have that conversation and when they're not. And we have to be able to read that. If we hear someone talking with someone else over this little gathering about guns and man, they're just evil instruments, that may not be the time or place to have that conversation. Because at that point, no matter what you say or do, all you're going to do is start up a bigger argument, and no one likes being singled out in a crowd. But maybe you call that person the next day and say, hey, Chris, I heard you talking yesterday over at the barbecue about this, that, and the other, and I don't want to start anything, but you may not know this, but I carry every day, and I go to the range at least 2 or 3 times a week, and is there anything that you might have questions? I'd love to have a conversation and all of that. Maybe there's a time and a place to have a conversation. So, yeah, exactly, G. But no, I think that there is a lot to be said about knowing your audience. And I think what Gary and Clover have both said before I bring G in, but they both said is, knowing your audience, to make it a human thing, make it a relative thing to their individual lives. So I think that is something to be said. But G, what about you?
Add 2 things once G's done. I want to add 2 things to what you're talking about.
Well, go ahead real quick. We can hold G off a little bit right now.
Well, I want to urge people to really be careful, because you're going to have to do one of 2 things. You're either going to have to, I call it politician speak a lot of times. You're going to have to learn. I don't talk the same way in my private Patreon chats that I talk in real life, that I talk to a group of elementary school kids, that I talk to make a speech at the Rotary Club. Everything is kind of tailored. Again, it goes back to from tone to the words I choose to use to all of that stuff. It's changed up. And so one thing that I've actually heard recently, and when you were talking about talking with people and stuff like that, is I've heard a lot, and everybody on this panel and in the chat has heard this, where you've heard people say, "Shall not comply. I'm not going to comply," and I ignore that 30-06 or sign or whatever it is. And be careful putting that out there, because this whole you're a rebel and you're not going to comply, that's existing law and existing regulation. And so I'm not coming at it from the standpoint of is something that's not constitutional legit. I'm not at all coming from that standpoint. I'm coming at it from an optics standpoint, and you could potentially shut down conversation, or foster an environment where a conversation isn't even able to start, because somebody is going to see you as extreme at that point.
Well, I think that there's a lot to be said, and there are people that we all see them all over. I mean, there's 1,000 different gun channels on YouTube and all that that are out there that will be talking about revolution and civil war and from my cold dead hands, and I love that. I love that people are passionate. But I think
to me, it's totally fine within an echo chamber.
Well, sure, but what I'm saying is it only takes one person to see a clip and send that to a news outlet and say, "See what they're talking? They're talking revolution. They're talking this, that, and the other. The crazy gun nuts are coming." So I think that we all, and my point is this: I think a lot of people, I don't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of people that will say out there and say all this stuff, I think a lot of times, I don't think they really mean it. I think they're just trying to be the tough guy, cool, revolutionist on the internet. And that's okay. But be mindful of, this isn't a closed forum. this isn't something that no one can see unless they're looking for. Anyone can see what you're putting out in these chats or in the live streams or whatever. So if you are about that, then by all means, go for it. That's your beliefs. Then be as radical as you want. But if you're just trying to be the cool guy, there might be other ways to do that, because you're making the rest of everybody kind of look weird. So just be mindful.
Reasonable, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. Sure. G, I want to bring you in real quick and kind of, I know that you've had a lot of conversations over the years talking with people. Has there been any kind of theme or strategy that seems to work better, that keeps people engaged in that conversation?
Well, first off, Clover got to go twice, and then I have to go quickly at the
Well,
end.
Clover just jumps in whenever the hell he
Who
wants.
said you have to go quickly?
He said,
Yeah, you have to go.
he even said quickly.
Really?
Did I really?
So,
I can
All
see the rest of my time, please.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Gentleman from Arizona. There you go.
We do. The floor does recognize the gentleman from Arizona.
no, but what was the question then?
I know. No, that basically, I was asking. You've had a bunch of conversation with a bunch of different people for a long time. Has there been a strategy that you found that helps keep people maybe more engaged in that conversation than others?
I don't believe that I have the ability to educate myself to some level that I'm going to learn how to go out and have conversations that are integral to change. So instead, I don't know how to answer your question. No, I guess is the simple answer. But I think going forward, I am going to attempt to support those who can and are having conversations. Here's the thing. Again, I've been real generation focused lately. And I've been anti-YouTube, and I don't even go on Facebook. I refuse to use outdated, old, manipulative platforms that are just perpetuating the same kind of evils in society that old media had. So I'm looking forward, and I'm now looking at these generations. I think I'm not even going to attempt to try to be the one having the conversation. I'm going to seek out those that are successfully having effective conversations and support them as much as I possibly can. And maybe have my effort in communication be to act as the mortar or the translator between old people who are still used to doing it. Like our generation, our parents' generation, some of the older millennials, maybe occasionally, I don't know, whoever, sorry, I'm burping, whoever, it has this gumption or whatever, there's going to be people out there that are willing to be different than the majority, but the majority is just going to be the way they are. So I think that a bunch of our generation is willing, but again, even if we were to somehow magically use the Lord of the Thrones or whatever marketing strategy to get everybody of our generation to vote pro-gun, that would be 1/3 of the vote this year. So we already know that our side is divided, and what's the use in trying to have a conversation with some old person? Let them have whatever opinion they want at this point. Hopefully we put out content that challenges their crazy stereotype or their crazy effort to suggest all gun owners are XYZ, big fat white guys, right? Hopefully people have put out lots of content to challenge all that and to offer these generations that are super savvy, that never grew up without a cell phone, or not a smartphone, never grew up without an Amazon. They've had an Amazon their entire lives. They don't know what it's like to not instantly have whatever they need. So again, I'm going to support those people. I'm going to seek out the people of our generations who are able to understand that we're done, that it's those people that need all the support. And I'm not going to suggest that I can tell them how to talk to their own generation. They are different people. It's their country. And hopefully we taught them well. But now we get to learn a little bit from them too. But anyway, I guess what I was getting at, raging against YouTube and Facebook, is that I'm not going to tell them not to use Snapchat. because I could see Snapchat honestly being really effective. It's like a meme that's longer with some video in it. So I could see that being super effective. Hopefully, again, they're so savvy, they don't know what it's like to not have Instagram. They're bombarded with stuff. They've got to be immune to stuff that still gets to us. You know what I mean? So they're going to see through all this garbage. I'm going to, again, plead to people that are watching this, because if you're watching this, you give a shit. Value your voice, contribute, put your flavor out there. Let the kids that are looking for stuff find valid stuff to add to their toolboxes, and try to get old time. I guess one way I was going to also answer this one, and this might be a whole different thing, is a strategy on how to talk, well, first there's two things. Now I'm going to take time like Clover did and take
No,
extra.
you're
So
good.
the first answer was that one. I'm going to let the kids, and I'm
I'll
just
give you Gizzard's time. It's all good.
Oh, I'll gizzard. So then my second one is we got to learn to not take it. I mean, every single time, I can't even tell you how many years I've been saying this. There's always low hanging fruit. They're always going to find somebody who does something weird, and they got a gun, or they had a gun, or they look like a gun or something. And then we got to learn to take the black eyes. I mean, for crying out loud, we should be able to get kicked in the nuts and knock the wind out of us, fall off a damn ladder, get kicked in the butt by a horse, knocked in the head with a coconut, get up, and still be fighting, right? For crying out loud, we're fighters. So we get a black eye. Oh, somebody said something mean about gun owners, and we get all upset, and that's falling into their damn ambush. So we got to get used to them doing that already. And part of this is people not sticking around. Part of it is people getting frustrated that their efforts aren't accomplishing anything, and they leave. They just get disinterested, and they become fair weather activists, and they're gone until it's necessary for them to be all hands on deck. They come around, they throw their $30, and they go back to golf or whatever it is they do. Sorry, I shouldn't say golf. They go back to guitars.
What the hell, man?
And they go back to tennis or whatever the hell they do. I was thinking of one person in particular that wasn't.
Yeah, no shit.
But anyway, so that's my other one, is we got to get used to taking it. And again, you get better at fighting by getting in fights once in a while. Like, we got to get used to having our lip broke and our nose busted so that we can fight through a broken nose. Every time we stop and go, oh, my nose got broken, what are we going to do about my broken nose? Then we don't win any fights. Like, come on, we're Marines, right? Or at least we got a good portion of us that are Marines. So that was my second one. And then the third one is more of a strategy, perhaps. You see these like stupid videos that everybody does where like, oh, people at gun shows are like this, or people at gun shops are like this, or the gun community's like this, or people that conceal carry are like this. But to do that in a more serious way, and maybe kind of figure out what the actual facets of the community are, because I think too many of us go, oh, there's a lot. There's hunters, there's competition shooters, there's collectors, there's blah, blah, blah. And we lose track after 5 or 6, like anybody would. And we go, yeah, there's more than 5 or 6. But I don't know if anybody's ever deliberately figured them all out and then take a serious look and figure out, like, competition shooting is this big and it's getting bigger, this big and it's getting smaller. Every little aspect of it, you take a look and you figure out. I mean, NSSF should be doing this. If they don't already do it, then shame on them. They're supposed to be keeping their finger on the pulse of our industry. But if they can't give us those numbers, I suggest we try to figure out those facets of those pieces of our population. And then if it turns out that, like, cowboy action are such a small, minuscule number that are getting older and dwindling, I mean, I'm sorry, but there's no need to waste time trying to get them to figure out why we need an AR-15. You know, if they're seriously not able to keep their own part of and I'm just picking on them because there's nobody here that shoots SAS, but, you know, if they're not able to keep their own aspect of shooting sports alive, then they're certainly not going to be like active against AR-15s. They're just going to be belligerently against AR-15s quietly as their part of the thing falls apart. Now, I'd rather see the industry get together, the community get together, and everybody help each other out so we all rise. You know, the tide rises everyone kind of thing. But I'm just saying, maybe strategically, since we're going into 2020, maybe there's some value to, and this might have something to do with Carrie's marketing strategy thing. I don't know how much she's done into the actual strategy of it, but as far as the preparation or the research to the strategy, maybe somebody like a John Lott or Knox or somebody has looked at this facet. But again, like, how big are these facets? Like, I suspect competition shooting is pretty big based on all the WIC hype and whatever. Like, how big an influence, like a big rush that had. And then maybe another way to look at it, another metric would be, even if it's not a big portion of the industry right now, like competition shooting, but if WIC can bring a ton of people to the industry, even though the relatively small proportion of the industry, keep that in, make that part of it, or keep that in effect. But again, then just be able to actually use some strategy. Okay, this is a pretty big facet of the community. Let's get them back on board. Let's figure out why they're straying and they're willing to let bump stocks be gone. Why weren't they fighting with us for this? And anyway, maybe take a look and go, we only have so many resources, and we've got 2020 coming, and there's this many problems, this many issues. Each of these issues has some significance or some consequence of that, some way to measure, and then say, look, it might seem like a lot, but only these 3 really matter, or these 3 are of such significance that they can actually flip us one way or the other. But if it's something as easy as getting people that play video games to be active as 2A, I mean, that seems pretty obviously. I don't even know if that's, but if that turns out to be one of the major bubbles, then heck, wouldn't that be a step in the direction of effort? Because now everybody can go, how can I talk to a kid about getting it, or how can I work on that effort? And now it doesn't matter if we're all best friends, but if we're all aware that there's like 6 or 8 things that could tip the scales, then we have 6 or 8 things we're working on instead of 1,600 things we all might be spinning off in different directions and diverting resources or diverting attention, again, going into 2020. I think the effect of that, if we were able to effectively make 2A media work in harmony or unison to the extent to be influential, the result of that would be politicians would never touch us again. It would be like there would be a giant echo in politics for like 2000 or 1994. They would be so scared because we'd be so organized, or we'd show that we were potentially that organized, that they'd never touch us again. If anything, the only time they'd ever come around is to say, is this okay? Can we do this? Is this okay if we do this? And then the other consequences, once we actually, if we're able to, or once we're able to get working together, not necessarily like I was saying, like we all have to be on the same team or working directly together, but if we're all pulling in unison, the results there is that we can start addressing things like, challenge 4473, challenge NFA, challenge things that are significant, so that the antis don't even have a chance to do something like they're going to do tomorrow and put 68 anti-gun things down.
Yeah, that's crazy.
At 10 a.m. tomorrow in Massachusetts.
Yeah, 68. That's crazy. Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to like what you're saying is collaboration. Collaboration is key, and I think that we all need to put down our egos and understand that collaboration doesn't mean we have to work together on one particular project. It's collaboration is if there's a project out there that needs to be, blown up, or just it needs to be marketed. Collaboration just comes everyone just letting everyone know what that project is, and whatever that is. I think like what we talked about earlier with Carrie, if she's able to kind of get something done after GRPC and before SHOT, that would be kind of cool to get people in the same room and say, look, let's not leave here before we have at least a unified message. And how you go about your message is your own flavor, your own style. Do what you got to do. But let's, like you said, let's make sure that they know that when we can and we need to be organized, that the only media that they're not seeing is ours. Let's make sure they see our media and let them know that we're not going away, and we're just as valid as any other mainstream media out there. So another mic drop moment for G. He does that seemingly every week now, and so that's gonna be one of those things that probably have to go slice up and put out there on its own, because that was good stuff. But let's go back to G real quick and kind of let people know about your projects you got going on, where they can find you, and what do you want them to know about your projects.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. I don't have anything prepared. I'm about to go broke, so I'll be doing all kinds of stuff in the near future as far as selling stuff off and trying different projects. But bit of a mad rush getting to the Gun Rights Policy Conference. Clover will be having his thing on Friday. He probably forgot to talk about it, but he'll be doing something for some awareness there. But again, there's my expectations, there's the reality, and then we'll find out what the actual reality of gun rights policy is. But without having unrealistic expectations, I still do need to survive the next couple of months with bills and stuff. So I'll have to put a lot of attention to that. And then after that, it'll be getting ready to start the tour again next year to do something to get, again, effort towards some sort of influence on the election instead of just letting 2A media be the fastest, most efficient bleacher seats to observe what's happening.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, buddy. I want to send a big shout out to Rick. Rick out there sent a super chat. Said he'd rather donate this to y'all than to the NRA. Keep up the good work. I appreciate you so much. And yeah, I mean, it's there are projects out there that people need to be aware of. There are projects out there that are awesome that seemingly no one knows about. So, we're very lucky to. I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I'm very lucky to be able to call you a friend, G, and we all know how much you put into this. And so yeah, guys, if you're out there, go check out. I'll plug it for them. Go check out, obviously, gunchannels.com, but go check out gearwebsites.com and G's got a bunch of stuff out there that helps keep his projects running. And if you are not familiar with his work, obviously Gun Websites is one of the OGs of the firearm community, and he always is putting on great stuff. But more importantly, you guys need to understand that are new to the community that how much he has and it continues to do for the gun community. And he's a very humble person, but like I said, I'm honored to call you a good friend of mine. And thank you for all that you do and continue to do, brother. I think but I don't think you truly understand how much you mean to most of us around here. So thanks for everything, brother. Gary, what about you? What you got going on?
Well, I've got my website, gizzardgary.com. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, I've got a couple weekly programs. Friday night, I host Foul Territory. It's a group discussion where we pick up Pro 2A topics and talk about them on a panel. Love to have you there. That's Fridays, 9 o'clock p.m., 8 o'clock Central. And then Sunday mornings, we host an open lobby type chat called the Early Bird Chat. And that is at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. And again, love to see everybody there. And Ghost, thanks for the invite. I think this was a good discussion, something to think about for sure.
Appreciate you coming on, and you're welcome anytime, man. It's just something that, I don't know if it's a good conversation or not, but I think it was. It's a relevant conversation to a lot of things that have gone through my mind the last couple of weeks. And, I don't know if people are having issues or not, but I know that I get emails from time to time where I get text messages or comments on videos of, hey, I was approached by someone and I didn't know how to answer them, or this person is no longer friends with me because I found out that I own a gun, and our kids aren't allowed to play together now because we have firearms in the house. And you hear enough of this stuff and you're just like, I don't know if we can do anything to change it, but why can't we try? So thanks for coming on, bro. I really appreciate you. Yeah, go check out Gary and all of his stuff. Love it. Love his chat on Friday night. And if you're up Sunday morning, I work most Sunday mornings, so I don't get a chance to jump on, but I do have it on with my earbuds on. And if you guys want to hear some comical stuff, there's some really good personalities on the show. So go check out Gary, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
What you got going on, bro?
Well, I mean, we've got obviously we've got Next Generation on Wednesdays. If you're not checking that out, you should. I mean, a lot of what we talked about tonight with the kiddos coming up and stuff like that. I mean, these kids are awesome. And tomorrow night, I can't remember how old this kid is, but this kid is shooting 3-gun. I mean, he's not near driving age yet, shooting 3-gun. So really cool. They have a big farm. So it's a conversation about, the responsibilities and a lot of other things dealing with that. It's just, it's amazing. Firearm Friday, I can't remember who's on. Torrent Suppressor maybe or something on Firearm Friday, but always cool with those. But the two main things that I really need to or want to and need to, I guess, pimp out. First is it's the Fun Life Project, because a lot of people have been following that and checking that out, and I've actually got a page on the website up that kind of goes in depth into kind of what that's about, a little more, and of course the Instagram feed, you can get to it from that page as well. And so we're so far I've stayed on task with that. It's a little daunting with other things going on to make sure that you get a post up a day, and yeah, finding content for that gets to be eventually I'm going to run out of my own content. So I've been trying to filter in content from friends, family, the gun shops, and stuff like that here and there to kind of offset it. But yeah, just the firearm content and the specs and what have you, the details on those firearms, just kick back, look at cool guns, and it's not about politics. It's not about a channel. It's not about that sort of stuff. And so wide variety of things to bring in, hopefully a wide variety of people, because as kind of we talked about, building again on tonight is, everybody kind of has their own little corner and their own little niche and what they enjoy and understand or are good at. So, and then the next thing I'll throw a link out. Let me copy this one real quick. Is this Friday is something that I've been working on. I don't know, maybe too little, too late. I don't know, but I'm gonna throw the link out there. Go over there and show up if you can from 4 to 8 Eastern time this Friday. We're gonna do a little gun policy conference awareness telethon type thing. This will be an opportunity. I've sent some emails out to the industry side, so we may end up having some industry people on to talk about it. Obviously, with everybody that's out there in the chat viewing and stuff like that, you'll have an opportunity to participate, hear from people that have been to GRPC in the past, that maybe are either already set on going or trying to go. And for those that are already going or trying to go, we're going to kind of go over and talk about what what their plans are for GRPC and what they look to potentially get out of GRPC and that sort of thing, and then let them sort of promote their projects and their revenue streams and stuff like that. That way, if people in the chat say, "Hey, I really like the project that this particular person is doing, and I really see a benefit with them going to GRPC, or maybe trying to help them get to GRPC," then their revenue streams, of course, are available. And those people that are out in the chat, be it normal people or the industry side that I'm trying to get in as well. So it's kind of a culmination of so why it's billed as an awareness telethon. It's kind of a thing to where we want it to be kind of a double-edged sword. We want to obviously promote the people that are doing this and get the word out more about what is going on at GRPC, but then also maybe bring up the ante, so to speak, when it comes to the industry, and maybe make them more aware and get them more involved with 2A efforts, because so many seemingly do very little. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for all that you're doing. And yeah, make sure you go check out Friday. It's going to be a fun little 4-hour telethon. And I'm not sure, do we call you Gary Collins? Or are we calling, I mean, who are you going to, we need to wear a tuxedo for this? I mean, I'm not really sure. When I hear telethon, I get nervous. I don't really know how to do that.
As long as you wear clothes, I'm okay with it.
All right.
I assumed
Walmart, no Walmart attire. I'll put it that way.
Shit, that's all I own is Walmart attire, man.
Well, I mean, like 3:00 in the morning, the people you see.
Can I wear a tuxedo T-shirt?
Dress like that. Of course, at 3:00 in the morning at Walmart, you're just liable to see somebody in a tuxedo. That's how crazy it is. So you never know.
Can I wear the tuxedo T-shirt?
Sure, the hairy chest would be better, but if you got to go tuxedo, that's fine too.
I'll get a T-shirt of a hairy chest. About that.
That's what I'm saying. The hairy chest T-shirt, right?
God bless. All right. Thanks for everyone for watching. If you're out there watching live, thank you so much. I hope we didn't bore you, and I hope we didn't make you any more dumber. That's just the way it goes sometimes. But no, it was a great conversation. I think that conversation that I've been wanting to have for a couple weeks. I wish I could have had it last week, but I was a little preoccupied with life, and sometimes that happens and all that. But guys, make sure you go check out all these guys' channels. If you have any questions, if you're watching a replay or and listening to podcasts, use the comments below. I love getting comments, and I'll try to answer the best of my knowledge. If you want to email some questions, I always get emails at least once or twice a day asking some really cool questions and questions that are thought-provoking. That's really what it's all about. So don't be afraid to email or all that, and comment below. We appreciate you guys. If you like what you're seeing, like what you're hearing, go ahead and hit the subscribe, thumbs up, notification bell, all that stuff, and go find these guys on all of their social media and follow them, like them, whatever you want to call it, subscribe to them. And if there's anyone out there that we should know about, then please use the comment section, because there's a lot of people that we're not familiar with. I would love to find. I'm always looking for some faces and some voices that I haven't had. So yeah, thanks again for everyone for watching / listening. I really appreciate you guys. We'll see you next week for episode 103. Happy Every Second Matters. I probably won't get to see you guys before then. I might see you on the second, but make sure you get out there for Every Second Matters and do your thing out there. So thanks again for everyone watching and listening. We'll talk to you soon. Semper Fi.